incredible determination. I would have
degraded in so many
I would have paid up and quit.
Oh, how many can you make it? 24. 24. I might go home. I don't think I can take this yelling and screaming.
Well, Charles opens with 9s, and Eric's got ace-king right behind him.
Need Nicky V to put his reservist badge on and go fuck someone up.
Make it 74.
Man.
Whatever.
Just make a citizen's arrest.
Is that a thing? Can you like legally detain another U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
What parameters?
If you're committing a crime.
If you're bigger than them and can actually do it.
No, that's not right.
If they're committing a crime.
We are playing 200, 400, 800 at Hustler Casino live. Charles, $105,000 deep, opens it up to $2,400. Over on to Eric Persson. He likes to get in there and battle. In the cutoff, he makes it $7,400 with ace-king offsuit, which is perfectly fine and reasonable. Back around to Charles. He calls. Let's go to the flop.
Heads up.
So Charles going to call here with 9s. Ace-king versus 9s. And there's a 9. We haven't seen a set all night. How about top set here for Charles? 9 in the door, but Eric has not flopped anything. 10,000 in a slow play, so.
Flop comes 9 of spades, 6 of clubs, 2 of spades. Charles with top set. He opts to check. Eric quickly fires out $10,000 into the $16,000 pot. And I think in this scenario, you would probably just want to bet even smaller, something like $6,000 or so. The problem with going big, like 10,000 or even bigger, is that when you get called, your ace-king is now going to be behind the vast majority of the time. Whereas if you bet something like 6,000, you kind of force Charles to stick around with all sorts of hands that are behind ace-king, which is good for you. So I think I would have gone a little bit smaller, but whatever, 10,000 is fine, and certainly call it standard-ish for cash games. Typically people use bigger bet sizes in cash games than they should. However, that does not mean that you should do what everyone else does. This is a spot where if I was in Eric's shoes, I would have probably bet, especially given you do have a spade in your hand, but I would have gone smaller, like 6,000 bucks. Whatever. Back around to Charles. He calls. He slow plays. He really wants to keep Eric in with all of Eric's hands that are drawing thin or dead, like random overcards. So this is an excellent spot to slow play. Let's head to the turn.
It would be bad news if Eric hits an ace or a king. And the turn's an ace. Oh, that's the worst card. Wow, check, check.
The turn is the ace of diamonds, and it instantly goes check, check. I can't believe it. I do not know why Eric would not want to bet this turn. At this point, he has the best hand almost every time. I realize he doesn't in this situation, but Charles is going to have a whole lot of pocket pairs and a whole lot of ace high that will check call the flop. And if Charles does not have one of those two hands, or hand types, it's probably going to be a draw. And if he does have a draw, obviously Eric wants to bet to get full value and protect his hand. So I don't like this check back at all unless you think Charles is going to check call the flop with all sorts of garbage and then feel very inclined to bluff the river. Maybe that's the case. I don't know anything about Charles' poker strategy, but I think this is a spot where Eric definitely wants to just bet the turn straight up for value and then go all in on a lot of safe rivers. Again, straight up for value. Top pair, top kicker, and a 3-bet pot is good. But that's not what happens. It goes check, check. Let's head to the river.
Eric plays a little pot control. River's a 3. Check, check.
20,000.
And just 20,000 here.
The river is the 3 of diamonds, a relatively innocuous card. Charles decides to go 20,000 straight up for value. I think this is fine and reasonable. Whenever you do have a really strong hand, you have to ask, do I want to slot this into a small bet size to try to induce bluffs and to protect my small bet size in general? Or do I want to put it in a medium bet size or perhaps even a very big bet size? I think typically with your sets, you would prefer to go either very small to try to induce raises from top pair type hands just straight up for value and also to induce a lot of bluffs, or you just want to go very big when you think your opponent has a good hand they're just not going to fold all that often. It looks like Charles is specifically trying to target hands like pocket kings or pocket tens or 6-5 suited, something like that with this medium-sized bet. But I do think in general, in a GTO world, you'd probably rather go very tiny or big. And as you have more tiny river bets in your range with hands like a random 9, I think putting the set in that tiny betting range is quite good. 20K is certainly reasonable, though. Let's see how Eric proceeds.
I don't know if Eric's thinking about maybe raising or what, but if he does,
55.
yep,
Make it 55,000.
55. But Charles only has 70. This is an easy shove. Did he yeah, he's all in. He's all in.
Seriously?
Eric thinks about it for about half a second and then makes it 55,000 with his top pair, top kicker. Certainly justifiable, certainly reasonable. You do have to be a little bit careful going for, let's call it thin-ish value on the river if your opponent will start to fold out hands like top pair bad kicker. But Eric gets in there, he blasts, and because he gets in there and blasts, he can actually go for, call it thin-ish value, perhaps thinner than other people can get away with because people are going to think Eric may be sporadically bluffing some portion of the time. Before I could even pause my video over here, Charles rips it all in. They are playing fast. What I want to know is whenever you are in a difficult, high-pressure, interesting situation on the river, how long do you usually think? 1 second? 3 seconds? 10 seconds? 30 seconds? Or do you like to waste everyone's time and think even longer than 30 seconds? Take a second, think about it, be honest, and write what you do in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, click the like and subscribe button. In all situations where you reasonably want to have a re-raising range, which will often be the case on the river whenever you're not all in, you always want to take at least a little bit of time to consider which hands would I like to bluff in this situation. And even if the answer is none against my opponent because they're a calling station, you should at least take a little bit of time because let's consider how this should look to Eric. On the river, Charles bets 20,000, fine. Eric then makes it 55,000, and then Charles immediately goes all in. Is he really going to do that with, I don't know, 8-7 for a busted straight draw? Just immediately all in, giving Eric pretty good odds to call. Probably not, right? Is he going to do this with a worse hand for value, like ace-queen? I would presume he's just going to call. He's not just going to bet, face a raise, and just rip it all in immediately. If he is going to go for thin-ish value, you'd think you'd have to think about it for at least a second. So when you're in Eric's shoes in this situation and you were raising for value, which was reasonable enough, and then you get jammed on, I think this now is entirely for value. So will Charles ever overvalue a worse hand? I don't think so. And therefore, that should give Eric a pretty easy fold with what should be a relatively strong hand. If Charles took even a little bit more time and maybe, I'm not going to say put on an act or show that he's going to try to out macho Eric out of the spot or something like that. But if he took just a little bit of time, I think at that point, he would be far more likely to get called by Eric's bluff catchers. In this scenario, though, I think Charles's hand looks about as face-up as it possibly could. Let's see if Eric thinks it's face-up, too.
That is the worst turn. Yeah, he's going to call. And there's a straight double up there for Charles.
How much is it? That's annoying.
Eric realizes this is not a good spot, but pot odds, what you gonna do? He finds the call, and he has shown the bad news. The tough thing about pot odds is even if you only need to win 1 in 7 times or whatever it is, I think in this spot, you may be winning almost 0% of the time, unless Charles is absolutely insane and overly creative. Maybe he is, but most people in this spot, when they bet the river, get raised, and snap put all their money in, they're going to show you the nuts or almost the nuts. I was sitting here thinking, what hand would I fold in this scenario? What's the best hand I would fold in Eric's shoes? Like if I had 9-6, would I fold? Probably. What about ace-2? I think ace-2 starts to get close. Maybe the right line is something like ace-6 should probably fold. This is a rough spot. I mean, I'm telling you, Charles is not bluffing in this scenario very often at all. Or at least people in Charles's situation are not bluffing in this spot very often at all. And if they're not overvaluing hands either, and I don't think many people are going to take a hand like even 9-6 and just rip it in, because obviously Eric could be sitting here with really good hands. Remember, he did make it 55,000 on the river. This is a spot where I think you need to be making very big hero folds in Eric's shoes. Obviously, the spot doesn't come up all that often, but hey, if it does in your games, especially if the game is loose and casual and people are just playing straight up and honestly, you can save a little bit of money on the river. Pot odds don't matter at all whenever you win 0% of the time. That's me it for today. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Make the most of your opportunities. And if your opponent's possibly give you the opportunity to get off the hook on the river and save a little bit of money. Save that money so you can afford a taxi home. I'll talk to you next time.